Have you ever wondered how a simple equation can transform the greatest prejudice into admiration? Keep watching to discover how an 8-year-old boy made an entire school apologize for underestimating his family. The marble floors of Brookline Academy gleamed under the afternoon sun, streaming through the tall windows of the prestigious Massachusetts institution. Sarah Martinez clutched her worn purse tighter as she walked through corridors lined with portraits of distinguished alumni, senators, CEOs, Nobel Prize winners. Their painted eyes seemed to follow her every step, silently questioning her presence in this temple of privilege. Behind her, 8-year-old Diego walked quietly, his small sneakers barely making a sound on the polished floor. In his arms, he carried a notebook filled with numbers and equations that would make most college students scratch their heads in confusion. But Diego wasn't like most children. While other kids his age were playing video games, he found comfort in mathematical patterns and formulas that danced in his mind like music. Mrs. Martinez, Dr. Harrison's voice cut through the silence as they entered his oak-paneled office. The director of Brookline Academy sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit a sharp contrast to Sarah's simple cleaning uniform she wore from her morning shift. "I've reviewed your application, and I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." Sarah straightened her shoulders, despite the exhaustion weighing them down from her double shifts as a janitor in downtown Boston. "Sir, I know Diego doesn't come from the same background as your other students, but he's exceptionally bright. His teachers say they've never seen anything like Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Harrison interrupted, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses with obvious disdain. "Brookline Academy has maintained its reputation for over a century. We serve families who understand our values, our traditions, people like us." His pause was deliberate, loaded with meaning that made Sarah's cheeks burn with shame. "I understand. The tuition is high," Sarah pressed on, her voice trembling slightly. "But I've been saving, and I'll work extra hours. Diego deserves a chance to—" "It's not about money." Dr. Harrison's tone grew colder. "It's about fit. Your son would be out of place here. Our students come from established families, families with legacy, with proper preparation for our academic rigor." He glanced dismissively at Diego, who stood silently by his mother's side, still clutching his notebook. "Perhaps you should consider more suitable institutions for your circumstances." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. She had faced discrimination before, as an immigrant, as a single mother, as someone who cleaned offices while others sat in them. But seeing that same judgment directed at her brilliant son ignited something fierce within her. "Dr. Harrison," she said, standing up slowly, her voice gaining strength, "you don't know my son. You don't know what he's capable of." The director's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Mrs. Martinez, I've been in education for 30 years. I know potential when I see it, and I know when families are reaching beyond their station." Diego remained silent throughout the exchange, his dark eyes moving between his mother and the man who had just crushed their dreams. But something flickered in those young eyes. Not defeat, but quiet determination. "And you? Have you ever been judged by your appearance or background? If you've faced prejudice, comment overcoming below. Sometimes our greatest victory comes when we least expect it." The small apartment in East Boston felt like a world away from the marble halls of Brookline Academy. Sarah sat at their tiny kitchen, in table, watching Diego work on what looked like incomprehensible mathematical equations. Numbers and symbols flowed from his pencil like water, creating patterns that seemed to make perfect sense to him, but looked like ancient hieroglyphics to everyone else. "Mijo, dinner's ready," Sarah called softly, not wanting to interrupt his intense concentration. Diego had been like this since he was 4 years old, completely absorbed in the world of mathematics. While other children built towers with blocks, Diego built equations with numbers. It had started innocently enough. Sarah remembered the day at the grocery store when Diego, barely 5, had calculated the exact change before the cashier could punch it into the register. The woman had stared in amazement as the little boy explained how he'd done the math in his head, accounting for tax and discounts faster than the machine itself. "Mrs. Martinez, your son is exceptional," his second-grade teacher, Mrs. Peterson, had told Sarah during their last parent conference. "I've been teaching for 25 years, and I've never encountered a mathematical mind like Diego's. He's working on concepts that high school students struggle with. But exceptional didn't pay for better schools. Exceptional didn't open doors in neighborhoods where your mother cleaned office buildings at night and served coffee during the day." Sarah had worked 3 jobs for 2 years, saving every penny she could, dreaming of giving Diego the education that could nurture his extraordinary gift. The sound of footsteps on the apartment building's creaky stairs interrupted her thoughts. Professor Williams from Boston University knocked gently on their door, a weekly ritual that had started 6 months ago when he discovered Diego solving calculus problems at the public library. "Good evening, Sarah." "Hello there, mathematical genius," Professor Williams greeted them warmly. He was a kind man in his 50s, with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a genuine passion for nurturing young minds. Unlike Dr. Harrison, he saw potential where others saw only a poor immigrant child. "Professor Williams, look what I figured out today," Diego said excitedly, showing his notebook filled with complex equations. "I think I found a pattern in prime number distribution that might connect to the Riemann hypothesis." Professor Williams examined the work, his eyebrows rising with each line he read. "Diego, this is graduate-level work. Where did you learn about the Riemann hypothesis?" "From the library books you recommended," Diego replied matter-of-factly. "It's really interesting how the zeros align with the critical line. I think there might be a connection to—" "Son," Sarah interrupted gently. "Professor Williams probably has other things to do tonight." "Actually, Sarah, I could listen to Diego's theories all evening. This boy has a gift that occurs maybe once in a generation." Professor Williams looked at Sarah seriously. "Have you considered applying to Brookline Academy? They have resources that could really help develop his abilities." Sarah's face fell. "We tried today. They said he wouldn't fit in." Professor Williams frowned deeply. "They said what?" "This is the most mathematically gifted child I've encountered in 15 years of university teaching." "What exactly did they say?" "They said people like us don't belong there," Sarah whispered, the humiliation still fresh and painful. Professor Williams's expression hardened. Something told Sarah that this conversation was far from over, and that Diego's rejection might have consequences no one at Brookline Academy could have imagined. 1 week later, Sarah found herself back in the imposing corridors of Brookline Academy, but this time she wasn't alone. Professor Williams had insisted on accompanying her, armed with Diego's mathematical work and a determination to make Dr. Harrison see reason. "Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Harrison's secretary announced coldly, "the director will see you now, but he only has 5 minutes. They were ushered into a conference room where Dr. Harrison sat with several other administrators and, to Sarah's dismay, a group of prospective parents, wealthy couples in expensive clothing, who looked at her with barely concealed disdain. "Mrs. Martinez, I thought I made our position clear last week," Dr. Harrison said, not bothering to stand or offer her a seat. "I'm not sure what you hope to accomplish by returning." Professor Williams stepped forward. "Dr. Harrison, I'm Professor Williams from Boston University's Mathematics Department. I'm here to discuss Diego's exceptional abilities." "Ah, the university professor," Dr. Harrison smiled condescendingly. "How admirable that you're trying to help. But surely you understand that academic charity cases don't align with our institutional standards." The wealthy parents chuckled, and Sarah felt her face burn with shame. Diego stood close to his mother, his young eyes taking in every detail of the humiliation being heaped upon his family. "Perhaps," Dr. Harrison continued, gesturing toward the whiteboard covered with complex mathematical equations left from an earlier faculty meeting, "you could explain to Mrs. Martinez here why her son's supposed talent doesn't qualify him for our academic rigor After all, I doubt she even understands these basic concepts. The equations on the board were remnants of a decades-old problem that had stumped the school's mathematics faculty, the infamous Brookline conjecture, a complex proof that had remained unsolved for 50 years, challenging every mathematician who had attempted it. These equations, Dr. Harrison said with theatrical flourish, pointing at the board, represent the level of mathematical thinking our students encounter daily. This particular problem has been unsolved by some of the finest mathematical minds. In Massachusetts, it requires years of advanced study, sophisticated reasoning, and the kind of intellectual breeding that comes from proper academic pedigree. All the prospective parents nodded approvingly, clearly impressed by Dr. Harrison's display of academic superiority. Sarah felt smaller with each word, but she noticed Diego's eyes had locked onto the equations on the board. "You see, Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Harrison continued mercilessly, "your son might be able to do simple arithmetic, but our students engage with concepts that require true intellectual sophistication. The kind of mathematical thinking that solves problems like this," he tapped the board again, "doesn't come from poverty. It comes from privilege, from generations of academic excellence." Professor Williams stepped forward angrily. "Dr. Harrison, that's enough. This kind of discrimination is not only morally reprehensible, it's realistic." Dr. Harrison cut him off. "We're preparing future leaders, not running a charity program for every child whose mother thinks he's special." The room fell silent except for the sound of chalk on board. Everyone turned to see Diego, who had quietly approached the whiteboard and was now writing rapidly, his small hand moving across the surface with confident strokes. What an embarrassing situation, isn't it? Have you ever witnessed someone being unfairly humiliated? If so, comment injustice below. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who need to learn humility the most. The conference room fell into stunned silence as Diego continued writing on the whiteboard. His small hand moved with remarkable confidence, filling empty spaces with equations, symbols, and calculations that flowed like a mathematical symphony. The adults watched in bewilderment as the 8-year-old boy worked through problems that had baffled scholars for decades. "Diego, what are you doing?" Sarah whispered, torn between pride and panic at her son's bold action. "The equation on the board, Mama," Diego replied without turning around, still writing. "It's incomplete. There's an error in the third derivation, and if you adjust for the logarithmic sequence and apply the modified Euler's formula—" His voice trailed off as he became completely absorbed in his work. Dr. Harrison's face had gone from condescending amusement to confusion, then to something approaching alarm. "Young man, step away from that board immediately. That's a complex mathematical proof that's been wrong for 50 years. Diego finished quietly, adding the final touches to his solution. He set down the chalk and stepped back, revealing a complete, elegant proof that transformed the chaotic jumble of numbers on the board into something beautiful and coherent. Professor Williams approached the board slowly, his eyes scanning Diego's work line by line. His face grew pale as he realized what he was seeing. "My God," he whispered, This is correct. Not just correct, it's brilliant." "What are you talking about?" Dr. Harrison demanded, striding toward the board. "This is ridiculous. A child can't possibly—" "Dr. Harrison," Professor Williams interrupted, his voice shaking with excitement and disbelief, "this boy has just solved the Brookline conjecture. This problem has been on this board for 50 years. Mathematics professors from Harvard, MIT, and Princeton have attempted this proof. Graduate students have written entire dissertations trying to crack just one component of this equation." The wealthy prospective parents began murmuring among themselves, their earlier amusement replaced by amazement and confusion. Some pulled out their phones, taking pictures of the board. "That's impossible," Dr. Harrison insisted, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "It's a child's scribbling. It can't be." "It's not scribbling," a new voice said from the doorway. Dr. Peterson, the school's head of mathematics, entered the room with several other faculty members who had heard the commotion. His eyes immediately went to the board, and his jaw dropped. "Harrison, where did this solution come from?" "The boy," Dr. Harrison said weakly, pointing at Diego, who was now standing close to his mother again, suddenly shy about all the attention focused on him. Dr. Peterson studied the board more carefully, pulling out his phone to call a colleague. "Professor Martinez at MIT needs to see this. This could revolutionize several fields of mathematical theory." He looked at Diego with newfound respect. "Son, how long have you been working on this problem?" Diego shrugged modestly. "About 10 minutes. But I've been thinking about similar patterns for a while. The key was recognizing that the original approach was constraining the variables unnecessarily." The room erupted in amazed chatter. Parents were calling their friends, faculty members were photographing the board, and Dr. Harrison stood frozen, realizing that he had just publicly dismissed and humiliated the family of possibly the most mathematically gifted child in the state of Massachusetts. Professor Williams put a protective hand on Diego's shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed mathematical history being made by an 8-year-old boy whose potential was dismissed based on his mother's occupation and their economic status." The words hung in the air like an accusation, and Dr. Harrison knew that his career, his reputation, and everything he had built was about to change forever. News of Diego's mathematical breakthrough spread through Brookline Academy like wildfire. Within hours, Professor Martinez from MIT arrived with a team of mathematicians to verify the solution. The conference room buzzed with activity as some of the most brilliant mathematical minds in New England examined the work of an 8-year-old boy. "Extraordinary," Professor Martinez murmured, photographing each section of Diego's proof. "Not only is the solution correct, but the approach is revolutionary. This methodology could open entirely new avenues of mathematical research." Dr. Harrison stood in the corner of the room, his earlier arrogance replaced by a growing sense of dread. The parents who had witnessed Diego's humiliation were now posting on social media, and the story was beginning to attract attention from local news outlets. "Dr. Harrison," Professor Williams approached him quietly, "I think you owe this family an apology." "An apology?" Dr. Harrison's voice cracked. "I was protecting the school's reputation. How could I have known that the boy was actually brilliant?" Professor Williams finished. "Maybe if you had taken 5 minutes to actually evaluate him, instead of judging his worth based on his mother's job and their zip code, you would have discovered what I've known for months." Sarah sat beside Diego, overwhelmed by the surreal turn of events. Her son, who just hours ago had been dismissed as unworthy of consideration, was now being consulted by university professors about mathematical theories she couldn't even pronounce. "Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Peterson, the head of mathematics, approached her respectfully. "Your son has just accomplished something that will likely be studied in universities for years to come. The Brookline conjecture has been a mathematical holy grail. Graduate students have dedicated years to attempting what Diego solved in minutes." The door opened, and a reporter from the Boston Globe entered with a photographer. Word had leaked to the media about the child prodigy who had solved a 50-year-old mathematical mystery at one of Boston's most elite schools. "We're here to interview the young mathematician," the reporter announced. "Is this the boy who solved the Brookline conjecture?" Diego looked up shyly from his notebook, where he had been working on an entirely different set of equations. "I just fixed the error in the proof. It wasn't that complicated once you saw the pattern." The reporter's eyes widened. Even his casual explanation demonstrated a level of mathematical sophistication that was astounding in someone so young. "Dr. Harrison," the reporter turned to the director, "can you comment on the school's initial rejection of this remarkable student?" Dr. Harrison's face flushed red. The question he had been dreading was now unavoidable, asked in front of MIT professors, prospective parents, and now the media. "There was a misunderstanding," he stammered. "We hadn't fully evaluated the boy's exceptional abilities." According to witnesses, The reporter continued, reading from his notes. You stated that people like them don't belong here, and questioned whether Mrs. Martinez could understand basic mathematical concepts. Would you care to elaborate on those comments? The room fell silent. Everyone present knew exactly what kind of misunderstanding had occurred, and it had nothing to do with academic evaluation. Professor Martinez from MIT stepped forward. If I may interrupt, I'd like to formally invite Diego to participate in our summer program for gifted mathematicians. We've never had a participant under 16, but we're prepared to make an exception. For talent of this caliber, other offers began pouring in. Harvard's mathematics department wanted to arrange tutoring sessions. Private schools throughout Massachusetts were calling to offer full scholarships. The boy whom Brookline Academy had deemed unfit was suddenly being courted by the most prestigious institutions in New England. Amazing reversal, don't you think? Have you ever seen karma work so quickly? Comment justice below if you believe things always come back to those who deserve it. 2 weeks after Diego's mathematical triumph, the atmosphere at Brookline Academy had completely transformed. The story of the 8-year-old prodigy who solved a 50-year-old equation had gone viral, bringing national attention to both Diego's extraordinary abilities and the school's discriminatory treatment of his family. Dr. Harrison requested a private meeting with Sarah and Diego, this time in his personal office, rather than the sterile conference room where the humiliation had occurred. His demeanor was markedly different, humble, respectful, and visibly remorseful. Mrs. Martinez, Diego, he began, his voice heavy with shame, I owe you both a profound apology. My behavior was inexcusable, unprofessional, and fundamentally wrong. I allowed my prejudices to blind me to your son's extraordinary gift. Sarah listened quietly, Diego by her side, still clutching his ever-present notebook. The same office that had felt so intimidating 2 weeks ago now seemed smaller somehow, less imposing. I'm offering Diego a full scholarship to Brookline Academy, Dr. Harrison continued, along with access to our most advanced mathematics programs. Additionally, I'd like to offer you a position here at the school, not as a janitor, but as a liaison for families from diverse backgrounds. Your perspective and experience could help us avoid the kind of mistakes I made. Before Sarah could respond, there was a knock at the door. Professor Williams entered with exciting news. Sarah, Diego, I wanted to tell you personally, the National Science Foundation has approved a special grant to support Diego's mathematical education. They're calling it the Diego Martinez Fellowship for Exceptional Young Mathematicians. It's the first of its kind. Diego looked up from his notebook, where he'd been working on yet another complex equation. Does this mean I can keep studying? Mathematics, Professor Williams smiled. Diego, you're going to have opportunities to study mathematics at the highest levels. Universities are already talking about creating special programs for students like you. The transformation extended beyond academic opportunities. The story had resonated with people across the country who had experienced discrimination or had their potential dismissed because of their background. Sarah received hundreds of letters from families sharing similar stories, thanking her for not giving up on her son's dreams. Mrs. Martinez, Dr. Harrison said, I want you to know that this experience has changed me, and it's changing our school. We're implementing new policies to ensure that every applicant is evaluated solely on their merit and potential, not on their family's economic status or background. 3 months later, Diego was thriving at Brookline Academy, working with advanced mathematics students 5 years older than him. He had also become something of a celebrity in the mathematics community, regularly corresponding with professors from around the world. Sarah accepted the position as family liaison, finding purpose in helping other parents navigate the academic system and ensuring that no child would face the discrimination Diego had encountered. Mama, Diego said one evening, as they walked through the school's corridors, past the portraits of distinguished alumni, do you think my picture will be up there someday? Sarah smiled, remembering the scared, desperate woman who had first Walked these halls months ago. Mijo, I think your picture is going to be in places we haven't even imagined yet. The Brookline conjecture proof, now known as the Martinez solution, was published in several mathematical journals, making Diego the youngest person ever to contribute to such prestigious publications. But more importantly, his story became a testament to the danger of judging people by their circumstances rather than their character and abilities. Professor Williams often told his university students about the day he witnessed an 8-year-old boy transform prejudice into progress. With nothing but chalk and an extraordinary mind. Genius, he would say, doesn't ask for permission, and it certainly doesn't wait for acceptance. It simply reveals itself to those wise enough to recognize it. What did you think of this story of overcoming? Let us know in the comments which part moved you the most. Don't forget to give a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring stories like this one. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos.